Hello, welcome to my channel. This is a book review of Autopsy of a Deceased Church by Thom S. Rainer, 12 Ways to Keep Yours Alive. So as always, if you guys are interested in the book, there's actually a link in the description below. This book is a pretty self-explanatory with its title, Autopsy of a Deceased Church. The author is a consultant for churches. He is hired to give an evaluation to different churches about their health and their status, and oftentimes he finds a church that is ready to close their doors. And so he offers advice about what they can do and things that they can change so that they do not die as a church. And so in this book, Rainer summarizes his experience with many dying churches and why they're dying, the response given for this news, and what we can do about this. So here's the intro story, which will help summarize what this book is all about, and then I'm actually going to list the chapter titles, which give a good idea in themselves of what the problem is of many of these churches closing. And so reading with the introduction here, just give you a good idea of what this book is all about. I knew the patient before she died. It was 10 years ago. She was very sick at the time, but she did not want to admit it. There was only a glimmer of hope at best, but that hope could become a reality only with radical change. She wasn't nearly ready for that change. Indeed, she was highly resistant to any change, even though she was very sick, even though she was dying. I told her bad news bluntly. You are dying. I hope I said those words with some compassion. I did feel badly sharing the news, but it was only the way I could see to get her attention. I even told her that at best she had 5 years to live. At the time I said those words, I really didn't think I was that optimistic. I would not have been surprised if she closed within the year. But she was not only in denial, she was in angry denial. I'll show you, she said. I'll prove you wrong. I am not dying. Her words were fierce, defiant, angry. It was time for me to leave. I had done all I could. I left. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was sad, very sad. Now, to her credit, she was right up to a point. She did not die in 5 years. She proved resilient and survived another 10 years. But her last decade, though she was technically alive, was filled with pain, sickness, and despair. I'm not so sure her long-term survival was a good thing. She never got better. She slowly and painfully deteriorated, and then she died. She, of course, is a church, a real church, a church in the Midwest. A church that was probably born out of vision, a church that died because she no longer had a vision. I was the church consultant over a decade ago. The church had reached its peak attendance many years earlier. The worship attendance in 1975 was 750, which took place in the good old days, and we'll talk about those days shortly. Just giving you an idea of just the conversation that he has there. It's a painful conversation. He doesn't take this lightly, just going in and just seeing some of the hurt that's going on, some of the denial and preferences that people have to their ways and traditions. And not that we're supposed to change the truth, but changing our methods and the ways that we reach people, and changing the carpets and changing the lights and changing the music, and understanding that families have to eat at a certain time, and understanding that there's kids, and how do you have a service prepared for families that have children, and how to prepare for that. And so he makes it very clear in this book that his heart is not to tear down the church, but the reason that we do autopsies in a real world situation, when we look in a dead body and find out why they died and what can we do to prevent that. And so here's just some of the chapter titles, and this really just kind of gives a good idea of where he's going here. So introduction, slow erosion. The past is the hero. The church refused to look like the community. The budget moved inwardly. Chapter 6, the Great Commission becomes the Great Omission. 7, the preference-driven church. Pastoral tenure decreases. 9, the church rarely prayed together. 10, the church had no clear purpose. The church obsessed over its facilities. And then 12, 13, and 14, he says, is there hope for this dying church? And then those chapters are, my church has symptoms of sickness. 4 responses. My church is very sick, and 4 responses. And my church is dying, and 4 responses. So just kind of gives an idea of what we can go and what we can do from there. And so I'm going to read off 4 of my favorite quotes from this book. And this book is not that long, so if you guys are at a church, I'm a youth pastor, and so I understand the intricacies of church. It is, it can be tough sometimes, when things are not going the way that we expect them to go, because we have faith and we expect us to be different and to us to be the exception. And so I encourage you guys to read the stories that are in this book. It's not that long of a book, and so I found it encouraging for things that I'm going through in my own life and in my own experiences, that I've not walked this path alone, that there are other people that have gone through similar situations. And so not everything he paints here is applicable to every church, but it's an overview of a lot of churches that he's looked at. All right, on page 22 he says, "Unlike the heroes of Hebrews 11 who held on to nothing of this life, these dying churches held on to everything, at least everything that made them comfortable and happy." Another quote found on page 33. "In dying churches, the last expenditures to be reduced are those that keep the members most comfortable." On page 48, he says, "One member declared he would let the church die before that change was made. He would get his way 8 years later." And last quote, found on page 52, "The church really died before then because its members refused to be the church." I think that sums it up there, that the church dies when we're not actually being the church. We're not doing what we're supposed to do and to outreach and to reach out to other people. And I'm going to get preachy here in a moment, but back to the book and book review. This is, I'm going to highly, highly recommend this book. If you, if you're a Christian and you're at a church that, maybe you think you're at a healthy church too, this would still be a good read. So regardless if you're at a church that's doing great or not, if you're at a church where it just seems like things aren't moving along and you want to know why things are moving along. Are we praying together as a church? Are we doing the things we're supposed to do? Not just so that we look good on the outside, but on the inside, that we are a life-giving community, the body of Christ. And so I definitely recommend this book to you guys. This has helped me a lot. And I know there's other books out there that are also really helpful as well that are similar. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it.